Welcome to California Virtual Family Law Attorney with founder Linda Garrett.
Welcome to California Virtual Family Law Attorney with founder Linda C. Garrett. I'm John Clements. Today we're diving into one of the most emotional and often misunderstood parts of divorce, and that's alimony, or what's legally called spousal support. So if you're wondering how long payments last, or what determines the amount, or whether you'll have to pay or receive support, hey, we've got you covered. We're going to break down the difference between temporary and permanent alimony, how judges decide what's fair, and what to know if you're trying to navigate this without a lawyer. But luckily, I have a lawyer here with me today. So Linda, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Great to be back.
It is
always,
always fun to talk with you. I always enjoy it.
Thank you.
Let's
Same here.
dig into it. All right, so let's talk about the difference between temporary and permanent alimony. So tell me, kind of explain how are those different? How are they decided? What does that look like?
So one little caveat is that there's a form that starts the divorce process called the petition for dissolution of marriage. And there's a space on page 2 where you can ask about support in these different boxes. And so let's just say, sorry, John, you're getting divorced. You were caught cheating. Sorry, but it happens. So wife's really upset at you right now. So she's going to file for divorce. But the good news, you guys are going to make up and go into therapy. So we're all good. But in the meantime, she's going to file and she's going to write that John is going to pay her support. And the problem there is that your wife, I'll call her May or June. Oh, no, May. That's a good one. I'll call her May. So May thinks where's the money coming from? So before May can even get any support, she has to file an official request called a request for order. That would be form FL 300 if anyone's wondering. And there she would ask. And that starts what we call the period of temporary support. So first, step 1, you've got to make a formal request using this form. And then you have to explain to the court why there's a need for support by you, May, and the ability to pay by my cheating husband, John. And so if May can convince the court of these two things, then the courts will use a software. We used to have DissoMaster, but we have this new software being used as of April of this year, where the courts will calculate using the software, kind of like an Excel spreadsheet input, what you make, what she makes, but on all these little other inputs, and then it'll spit out a number. And we call that guideline temporary spousal support. And so there might be a number, there may not be a number, but let's just say there is a number. Then you have the right to say, well, whoa, Your Honor. Did she not tell you I'm paying the entire mortgage, all the cars, all the insurance, all this, all that? And then Mary's like, yeah, Your Honor, I forgot. I didn't mention that. So the courts can then apply what are called Epstein credits. And essentially that's giving you an offset in the form of credits against anything the court would order you to pay your wife, because support is for her to pay her own bills. But if you're paying all her bills, not as much. So the courts will deduct as an offset, which you can prove to the court. So the temporary period is just a Band-Aid. We don't know what's going on. We've not done what's known as our mandatory preliminary disclosures. So we don't know what's all there, but at least answer 2 questions. Does she have a genuine objective need? No, May, you can't sit on the couch eating bonbons, watching soap operas, and you're healthy. You got to get off your butt. But let's just say, Your Honor, my back hurts, my arthritis, and of course it's fine for right now. And so they'll give her possibly some support during this temporary period. Again, not a whole bunch of analysis going on, just does she have a genuine objective need, and does he have the ability to pay, taking into account his Epstein credits, assuming John is smart enough to mention to the court he's got some Epstein credits, which most times he might or will. And that's a temporary period, and that could last for the duration of the divorce process. And funny little story on the side, I can't help myself here, it was a woman. I think I may have mentioned this gentleman from the past podcast, but he was the gentleman who, finishing up with divorce number 2, his feet are signing the divorce decree on divorce 2, literally with his toes. And he's saying the I do to the new wife, who's a French model in Paris.
Yes, I do remember this. Yeah.
Yes. And so they're married for 1 year, and she's the one who filed for temporary support, and she drug dragged out the divorce case for 2 years because she knew that once she was done, no more support, because the rule of thumb, again, the 80-20 rule, is have, if they were married for under 10 years, she, as a rule of thumb only, half the life of the marriage. So that would have been 6 months in her case. So her smart attorney drug it out for 2 years. But technically, temporary support ends when the divorce is finalized. And then there's a new discussion. Does wife May, in this case, decide therapy didn't work, you guys are still going to get divorced, and does she get therapy going, or does she get spousal support going forward after the divorce? And we call that permanent spousal support. And the courts will then undertake what's known as, I call it the forensic analysis. That's using these factors that we see in the Family Code of California, known as the 4320 factors. And it's a comprehensive forensic analysis. What are the ages of the parties? How long were they married? Does she help with his education? Did she not work because they had kids? Is he ill? Is she sick? All these questions, and questions about, yes, the kitchen sink, to determine if wife will get support going forward, and for how much, for how long. So, and that can go on to zero, the amount of zero. It could be a number. It could be a number for a few months, a few years, and in certain cases till one of you dies or she remarries.
Yeah, so I was
So it's
curious
not so
about that. Yeah,
easy. Yeah.
it's not easy. So temporary, it sounds like temporary support could be assigned during the divorce proceedings, and then
Mhm.
permanent
That's what it
would be
is. Yeah.
would be assigned potentially after the divorce. So when I think permanent, I think of the normal usage, which is just forever, but that's maybe not necessarily the case. It sounds like it's
Mm.
more of a short term, long term, like it might depend on some different factors. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, excellent question, John. Yes. So we have two rules of thumb, I would call them. We've heard the phrase like, "Oh, get to the courthouse before I've been married for 10 years," because we have this rule of thumb as a definition that a marriage of 10 or more years is defined as a long-term marriage. And a marriage that is of long term, we have to do a different type of analysis of duration. So the marriage that's under 10 years, we had that 6-month rule. But again, all of these are defaults. These are the 80-20 rule. And with each, in the temporary, or I should say in the short term marriage or the long term, there are exceptions and at times exceptions to the exception. So a couple is married even 3 months, for example, and then wife pushes her down the stairs and now she's crippled for life. And he says, "Well, Your Honor, she should just get support for 1.5 months." The court's going to say, "I don't think so, sir. That's not going to happen here." And the court can order him to pay spousal support forever until she dies or remarries. So again, we have that 20% rule. It's small, but it's mighty. It does come up. But in terms of the duration for permanent, the courts have that rule of thumb again. If 10 or more years, the rule of thumb, I keep saying that over and over, that's the 80% rule, is till remarriage of the payee, the one getting the money, the payee dies, or either party dies or she remarries. But the courts in this rule of thumb, they can look at such things as, why is she not still working? Is she because she just feels entitled and he owes me because because John cheated on me with a 25-year-old at a nudist colony?
I can't believe you're
I'm
bringing all this out in
exaggerating,
the
of course, but
open, Linda.
is she just feeling she's entitled? Or is she like she's sick? Or she's got heart disease? Or she's got cancer? So the courts are going to delve into these questions, but that's assuming the judge has to decide. But many times, believe it or not, John, the case on support, permanent support, is decided between the parties. And that can be all over the place. And ideally, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it's a great idea for the parties to reach their own agreements. And I take that to be important, especially when there's kids involved. When you have kids involved,
Yeah.
it really is death do you part, because people think, "Oh, I'm divorced now." Well, no, yeah, you are, but not really, because you still have to go to the graduations, the birthday parties, the grandchildren's bar mitzvahs or birthday parties. So you're still going to see your ex at all these events. So I try to encourage people to settle the case, because then we create closer to a win-win. It's not perfect, but I got all the apples and you got all the oranges, and it's a win-win in that way. But when the judge decides, usually one person's happy The other one's not just unhappy, they're resentful. And resentment
Yeah.
can last for decades. So
Yeah,
there you
absolutely.
go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think this kind of, as we've been talking, it kind of reminds me of our previous conversations where so much of this is deciding to be an adult and to handle it in an adult manner and to think about, in this case,
Mm-hmm.
what's best for your kids. And so you may not enjoy the situation you're in, but you do owe it to yourself and your former partner and your kids to, do the right thing.
Easier said than done. And I don't know
Yeah.
why it is. I think when people are faced with losing their houses, their money, their children, they get desperate. A good chunk of my clients or the cases that I deal with, there's some craziness going on that they're like, Miss Garrett, I'm normally not this way, but I'm angry, I'm drinking more because that's what makes family law so unique is that we're dealing with the essence of who this person is, what makes them, their housing, their money, their retirement, their kids, everything. And so it's a very difficult area of law for sure. I think it's the toughest one from my opinion. In my opinion, because we're dealing with raw emotion of everyone, including the children. Hello, including the children. So I do my best to encourage my clients, coaching or full representation clients, this mantra that says, love your children more than you hate your ex. And some get it, and some like, yeah, but the yeah, but comes up. But Miss
Yeah.
Garrett, but you don't know my husband. You don't know this. You don't know that. I go, well, I don't need to. You've got kids and they're suffering. They're crying. They're cutting themselves. They're drinking behind your back. They're having fights at school now. They're getting bad grades. And they're like, yeah, but okay.
Yeah. Well,
Going on deaf ears here.
yeah. I appreciate you being a voice of reason and trying to help people with that. That's something that maybe not every lawyer would do. So I'm very encouraged
It's
you do
true.
that.
It's true.
I do want to go back real quick because I did have one follow-up question about the spousal support. And let's
Yes.
take, my made-up example, honey, if you're listening, I love you very much. Would never cheat on you. But let's say that, my wife and I, we separate, we get a divorce. I'm paying
Hmm.
her support. And then let's say she wins the lottery and I lose my job. Do I still owe her support? Can that be changed? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so that's part of the analysis in the 4320 in the divorce. Normally, there's a rule of thumb that says, again, that 80/20 rule. The rule of thumb is that if you're married under 10 years and there's a divorce, the doors of the courthouse, we call the court's jurisdiction, is closed. So if then something changes, then the court's going to say, well, we're done with you guys. Good riddance, by the way. Be gone. Go, go. But in a marriage of 10 or more years, the default is to keep the issue of support open, meaning the court's jurisdiction, their doors will stay open because they do realize things do change. And the longer you're married, we have those unique issues that a younger couple does not have. So someone who's married for 8 years and they're in their 30s now, their issues are not as unique as a couple who's been married for 30 years, 40 years, and now we can't treat them the same way. So you're right. The husband who's been working as works for the recycling, and he picks up a lot of trash for 30 years. He's been paying support because he gets paid really well, but now he hurt his back, and he has the right to go back to court to ask the court to modify or terminate spousal support, because maybe at that point she's making more than he is. Again, the 80/20 rule always applies to everything I will ever say in this podcast. There's always an exception, and sometimes an exception to the exception. But generally speaking, the doors stay open on a marriage of 10 or more years unless the agreement, called a marital settlement agreement, specifies in writing with initials next to it, we also agree to terminate the court's jurisdiction to award or modify spousal. And that's extremely rare, but that's what it is sometimes, because a husband might say, look, if I just pay you 80 grand a month for the next 5 years, can we just be done with this? But you can't go back to court. And she says 80, and it says tax free. Yeah, tax free, 80 grand a month, tax free, next 5 years. She goes, make that 6. We got a deal. He goes, fine, 6 years, even though they were married for 30 plus years. And so she's
Yeah.
stuck now because it's in their contract that she initialed, and she had an attorney. They made her initial, and she did a CYA email and letter.
Yeah, I can imagine that wouldn't be a very common occurrence. certainly my wife couldn't get 80 grand a month from me for 6 years. I just wouldn't happen because I don't have it.
Yeah, but no,
That'd
it's
be pretty
sometimes,
cool.
but in the settlement version of this, you guys might negotiate because you again, it's what's important to you. So, are there times when people say, "Well, our house is paid off in full. You love the house. Yes, I'm a doctor who makes 400K a year. How about I give you our house? It's fully paid off in full. That's worth 1.5 million, all yours. Even though half of that house is mine, but I'll give it all to you on condition you waive your right to spousal support." And she says, "Well, let's just add 1 year of support then." And he goes, "Fine. And 1 year of support at 80 grand for the month per month." And she goes, "Okay, we got a deal." So
All
that's
right.
another way to
Well,
do it
there
as
you
well.
go.
So that's
That is
why
another way to do it.
settlements work out even better because you create that win-win, which you really
Yeah.
cannot do
Yeah.
with the judge.
That's true. Yeah. So I do.
Mhm.
So I do have another question, and
Sure.
that's for there's a lot of people out there who maybe aren't they don't have $1.5 million homes, or they're not doctors making 400
What?
grand a year. I know, believe it or not. And so
Shocker.
maybe there are people out here who are listening who are saying, okay, look, I can't afford your services as a lawyer. So what could you tell them that they should know before they start negotiating or agreeing to something?
Yes. So if I had a dime, let's make it real, a dollar for every person who called me who first said, "I need an attorney," and wants to hire me. But the thing of it is, most people, from my experience, don't have the funds to hire an attorney. They're borrowing it, they're taking a loan out, credit cards, friends, family. And I'm referring to people who I've actually coached, believe it or not, doctors, lawyers, two millionaires. I got two millionaires to my name, and one of them I'm currently coaching for strategic purposes. But most folks, except for those two millionaires, it is a hard apple to bite to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to an attorney, and the bucket has a bottomless pit, meaning that we run out. Guess what? Pay us more because you two cannot agree on anything, not even the color of the sky. So normally I'll start with a phone call, almost, "Miss Garrett, I'm calling because I want to hire you." And I say, "Well, let's start with the coaching." And so normally what happens is with the coaching, one of two things happens invariably. Either A, John, we'll use you again, has just coaching with me for now because you guys are fighting about the house, support, the kids, the mortgage, the 401k, the data separation, whether or not you have your girlfriend still. It's like there's nothing you're not fighting about. And that's the case of many attorneys, not me, but many attorneys. "Oh, yeah, there's all this money. They're going to just keep me in their case for years. Oh, I can buy a new house with this case, with John's money." And so what happens is I encourage people to try the coaching as long as they can. And for some people, this coaching keeps going on. But at some point, one of two things will occur. Either A, they'll become clients of mine for full representation, like for a trial, a move away when May wants to now move to Los Angeles because she met, Angelo from Italy, 20 years old.
I can't blame her.
He's got muscles and he's strong and he's got curly locks. And she's like, "Well, thank you, honey, for that, because now I've met this guy." So she wants to now move to Los Angeles because our friend, the Italian guy, wants to be an actor in LA. So so now the question is, well, now she wants to move away, Miss Garrett, and you know, I'm afraid. And so we can discuss me stepping into the shoes of my client. So yes, so while I provide the coaching for a lot of people, for sure, my dance card, if you will, of people that I represent, it's full. I'm at maxed all the time because the demand for me, for example, is so much higher than there is of me. And so so in other words, when people reach out and say they need an attorney, the question for me is, do they need it? Do they want it, or is it fear based? And then I coach as long as I can. And for some, it goes till the very end, even to a trial where they've won on my coaching. I love those. Or it's time for me to step in down the road where we went from being in the kiddie pool, if you will, which is where all divorce cases start. They always start in the kiddie pool. Fill out this form, file this form, serve this form. That's everyone. But then we start getting deeper into accusations, lies, somebody's drunk all the time, someone's an alcoholic, this, that, this. And then we're now getting into the murkier end of the pool, and then sometimes into the ocean with sharks. And then it's time to bring an attorney in, such as myself. And that's what I do. So I try to hopefully have them save their money as long as they could. And then I might come into their case near the end of their case. And that's how all my clients are right now. Someone who started as a coaching client, but eventually it was like, yeah, it's time, John. You need an attorney at this point. But in the meantime, you've saved your money, right? He goes, oh, yeah, of course I did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, and to all the listeners, go check out old episodes where we really dive into this and how cool of a unique program this really is. So Linda, as always, it's been a pleasure. We're out of time, unfortunately, but thanks for jumping on the call today.
Thank you so much. I
Absolutely.
love this. I'm glad I can help.
Yeah, me too. And for those of us, or for those of you who are listening, alimony can feel overwhelming, especially if you're already dealing with the stress of divorce. But hey, you know what? You don't have to figure it out alone. If you want to connect with Linda and her team, go to lindacgarrettlaw.com. And don't forget to like, share, and leave a review. That really helps us spread the word to other people who need to hear it. And with that, have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.